Good morning, everyone. We are right at the top of the hour. Hope everyone's having a great day two to our DE21 conference. Wanted to just welcome you to our second session of the day, Characteristics of District and Community College Relationships and Successful Dual Enrollment Programs. So we have some great presenters here, and I'm going to turn it over to Victoria.
Thanks, Michelle. Welcome, everyone. I hope everybody else is having a great session and actually the great conference this weekend. It's really informative and I've really enjoyed it. Before I start, I'd like to point out that there is a PDF. It's a brief that this presentation draws on. And so if you would like some more information about the project that we're going to discuss, you should be able to download that PDF from the website for the conference. My name is Victoria Coyle. I'm a senior researcher with University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And with us today, I'm going to introduce everybody and let everybody take a minute to discuss their project, their role in the project, and then we'll go on and introduce the project a little more. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the challenges and how the districts and the college were able to overcome some of these working together. And I think that's really the big story, is how they've worked together to accomplish such great things. So Lauren Jones is Senior Director of College Credit Plus, currently at Columbus State Community College. Debra Carver, Assistant Principal at Central Crossing High School in Southwest City School District, and then Tanya McClanahan, who is Director of Equity at the Columbus City Schools. So Lauren, I'm going to let you start and tell us a little bit about yourself and the relationship to the project.
Sure. So happy to talk with everyone today, and please post those questions in the chat if there are any, so that we can continue the conversation and be responsive to the issues that are most interesting to you. I started with the project actually before I moved into the administrative role that I was in. I started with the project working on boot camps to help students improve their placement test skills. And I had come as a faculty member from developmental education to help with Readiness for College Credit Plus, which you'll hear us refer to a lot. Today, College Credit Plus is Ohio's dual enrollment program. So if you're not familiar with Ohio's program, it's state legislated, and the districts pay for the tuition and also the textbooks for students that participate in the dual enrollment process. And there's a funding mechanism from the state for that. So I started off just trying to help students get ready for the college courses, and then I moved into an administrator role on the project and helped support the PI, because this was a grant initiative, and then got to work with the faculty and then with our colleagues at the high school. So it was definitely an evolving project, and I feel like as each of us are examples, our roles sort of evolved at the project's end as well, but has been a great experience. So I'm glad to talk about it with you here today.
Great, thanks. Deb, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Deb Carver, and I'm currently at Central Crossing High School as an assistant principal. But I joined the project as a grant coordinator for the College and Career Readiness Expansion Project. So that was a position that was funded through the grant, and its purpose was to be part of the communication mechanism between the college and the secondary schools. But I also had some previous experience. I taught an embedded dual enrollment course at my school, then had the district role as the grant coordinator. And then I'm currently at the high school right now, where I have a building perspective, and we have several embedded courses, as well as we run an accelerated learning center, which is where students from across our district, we have 4 comprehensive high schools and 1 career academy, 13 middle schools, where students across our district can come and take a suite of courses in general liberal arts, software development, or health sciences. And that's housed here at Central Crossing. So I have a little bit of perspective from each level.
Great, thanks, Deb. And Tanya, give you a minute to describe your role.
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here with you on this Friday afternoon. So during this project, I served in the role of Supervisor of Higher Education Partnerships for Columbus City. Just a little bit of context, Columbus City is the largest district here in Ohio, and we have about 18 high schools. And the role of Supervisor for Higher Ed Partnerships is really what allows a district of our size to interface with university partners so that we have a streamlined approach and we kind of have a point of contact. My role at the time was to help ensure that the buildings and the principals and the staff that were part of this work kind of were gathered together around the partnership and to help move things along. In that role for the Higher Ed Partnership Supervisor, that is where we also do all of the administrative work that connects our students to any College Credit Plus programs, special cohorts, and then also our embedded courses that are across our high schools. I had a nice amount of context prior to the project where we had worked on other partnership grants. And then just really having some real direct relationships with our building leaders as well as our central administrators to make sure that we were keeping the lines of communication as streamlined and open as possible.
Great, thank you very much. I will go on here and I'll describe the project briefly. The project that we're discussing today is called the College and Career Readiness Expansion Project, or CCRE. Now, this was a 5-year research project. It was funded by the U.S. Department of Education. It was led by Columbus State Community College. It was part of a regional effort to improve workforce readiness in the central Ohio area. And a core goal was to increase the number of students taking college level courses. And there was an emphasis on expanding access for historically underrepresented populations. So this presentation is going to focus on how the college and the partner districts customize the project activities according to characteristics of each of the schools and of the student needs. Now, we have Deb and Tanya represent 2 of the districts. There were 7 districts, and there were, Lauren, I think there were 16 high schools involved, actually. And I will say Tanya is part of the Columbus City School Districts with 18 high schools, but there was one district with 1 high school, and then there were a few with just a small number of high schools. So the size of the districts ranged from very small to the largest in the region. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about was while we talk about these relationships, I think it's important to say, and the panel can come in if you'd like, it's important to say that what was developed through the project to help the project along is continuing. It didn't end when the grant ended. So I think that's important to let everybody know. So come here, I'm going to talk a little bit about really our interest is the differences. What are the differences? There are differences in cultures, the high school and the the community college or any college, 4-year successful implementation of a dual enrollment project or program requires a strong partnership. And so these different structures pose challenges to the partnerships. And I just wrote a couple down, for the slide. One thing that I think is always really important to think about is that developmental role that K through 12 provides to students and supporting them and guiding them how to be a student and how to, listen and how to, they scaffold the activities and the knowledge. Where a post-secondary education really strives to encourage students to become self-reliant and independent. And, there's not, the student is the one responsible for making sure that they're, keeping up. Does anybody, I know that the three of you have that developmental experience as well. Would you like to comment on that at all? And you don't have to, it's Deb.
Yep, I was going to say one thing that was beneficial from the project was a course was, I guess, developed or rolled out into the high school, the Coles 1101 course, which was, Lauren, please jump in, but kind of an introduction to college and resources and how to access those and really how to be a college student. And it's in Southwestern City Schools. We began by encouraging almost all of our freshmen, almost all of our ninth graders to take this class. And they could take it for college credit, the college success skills that Lauren put in the chat, or they could just take it as college and career readiness. And we were hoping that would start prompting students and build some momentum to take future college credit plus courses. Something else, just talking about giving kids structure and the independence at high school. Just, the high school takes more of a custodial kind of role of our students, and we have to know where they are. So, there's some adjusting to school calendars where the college calendar is a little bit more condensed. And we just have to recognize that, and at the high school level, build in some processes. So if we start, in August and a week ahead of the Columbus State start date, that we have some procedure in place where our students are coming to class and they're accounted for ahead of the college start date. Those are two that come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Deb, can I just piggyback on that piece when you talk about the student piece and the structures that were provided? I just want to take a step back and highlight that for our district, having 16, we had 4 that were intentionally part of the ongoing process. And the support that we provided initially within this partnership to our building leaders was so fundamental for, I think, how we moved forward across the project. And I appreciate that Columbus State, sitting in the center of this, continued to bring our building leaders together for us to have conversations just around what this really means in terms of bridging the gap between high school structures and supports and processes and calendars and all of that to being a part of this project. Even in the midst of having the state having already outlined College Credit Plus, it was a deeper dive into here's what we can do under that state structure to be able to really uplift this work within the building and construct some best practices and a model. For us, it was helpful because once we had that momentum and you had that core group of building leaders and sites, then we had a ripple effect where we knew that those principals would begin to talk with their colleagues about here are the things that they're doing and the conversations that we're having. But that undergirth of having our principals in the space with all partners, I mean, I thought that a lot of the conversations, even being in the room with Southwestern, was so rich because it allowed all of the senior leaders and the building administrators to really be in a space with some focused, intentional discussions around the work and then leave that space and carry it out. And then the other part for us, and I'm sure for Southwestern, is customizing what that site needed. right? So again, just imagine, we have 6 regions, and each of those regions and each of those high schools have a certain culture, have a certain clientele or, community that's undergirding what has happened prior to, and really being strategic about here's where our students are and here's where we want them to go. And this is what our specific, building would need.
Thank you. I'm looking to the chat. Do the credentialed faculty members teach the college readiness course at the high school as well? And this one is asking because the issues they have offering dual enrollment at the high school, it's the lack of credentials needed by the instructors. Do you want to start with that one, Lauren?
Sure. The
Okay.
college success skills course, the only requirement to teach that particular course, it's a first year experience course, is a master's degree. And so that one was very easy to implement at the building level because many high school teachers had that master's degree, even if it was in a different area. When we get into the subject specific courses that buildings were trying to lead into, that of course became difficult, just as you mentioned, right? Because we're HLC accredited and had the same issue of, for English, for example, you might have somebody with a master's in English ed, but that wouldn't work despite 20 years of great teaching. That wouldn't work for HLC accreditation. So we've worked on some different options for that and have really used an online instruction format where we've got some high school instructors doing some boots on the ground facilitation, but we've got the Columbus State instructor doing the grading and everything else. And that's a system that was a good short-term way of moving forward as we hopefully get everybody accredited the way that they need to be.
One of the other things too, and then I'll just move to kind of a little more focused discussion, was we will talk about the data sharing policies too. And those are some of the, the structures that are created necessarily for each organization. But when it comes to the point where, the two need to talk and need to work, I think that's where the panel members found that, they needed to really work together. So let's talk a little bit about challenges that high schools and the community college experience implementing this project. Things that, maybe led to discussions or, just specific challenges that occurred. Does anyone, Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. I think the biggest that, all of you who are in the dual enrollment space know is just the translation problem. So whether it's the calendar, right, and the start date, or things like FERPA, and just translating those rules. And of course, accommodations at the high school are different than they are for a college course. So really just trying to get over some of those language barriers and really philosophical barriers too, in terms of how do you best support a struggling child? Because I think everybody has the best of intentions for students, but college faculty sometimes take maybe a more hardline approach than a high school faculty member would be asked to do. And so trying to have conversations with our Columbus State faculty about just appropriate interventions for students was definitely something that we continue to work on. And I think from the grant perspective too, in terms of implementing everything that we wanted to do, a real challenge was the difference between compliance and the things that we had to do for the grant versus transformation. And I think we started off being really worried about, okay, we're meeting every month for this period of time and we're having this conversation, because in the grant we said we'd meet monthly. And then that transformative lens is where we ended up having to do a lot of different things as people and positions changed, as the needs of the schools changed, and as the conversations just evolved. So those monthly meetings transformed into, frequent emails, phone calls, texts, et cetera, and really individualized meetings rather than getting the whole group together, because as Tanya was explaining, there's such a different atmosphere at each high school site. And with us working with 7 districts, we just found that the needs and the ways in which each district was available to lean into different aspects of the work, it just looked a lot different. And so finding that ability to really customize was important for us.
Sorry,
Yep,
was muted.
Yeah, I was going to say another challenge, I guess more philosophical challenge, was as the project really took off and our enrollment, was growing, the enrollment in college credit bearing courses was growing. For us in Southwestern, it was committing to keeping the focus on the original intent, which, yes, was to increase the number of students accessing college work, but specifically our underrepresented student population. So making sure that it wasn't kind of that same population of students who were already accessing AP and other methods to gain college credit, but really looking to reach our families and students who typically weren't shown in those classes, and searching for them and advertising and educating our families and students, and really recruiting, going into data and finding kids and inviting them to sessions and inviting parents to sessions to let them know about the opportunities. So that was a challenge, not to get wrapped up in the total number of kids, but to really take a deep dive into who's accessing that opportunity and making sure that we were keeping our focus on our original intent.
Deb, that is such a good point, because once that hurdle was highlighted or really focused, then it became, what type of supports do students who typically don't access these opportunities need? And that looked very different than what we had been used to working with, or what is this additional layer of support? And when you talk about that, you don't always have an additional layer of hands to do it. So now you're looking to the instructors and to the guidance counselors to dive in a deeper way. So one of the things that was helpful was like the Starfish early alert system, where it would help monitor the student's performance in the course. And those are those type of things that you don't know until you get in it. So now we have a way to monitor it, but then what does that look like at the building level? We have the information, we see it. How then are we taking that information to provide this group of students with the supports that they need, not just to access the course and take the course, but to be successful, and then to continue in that pathway of taking, more higher level or advanced courses, whether it's sticking with CCP courses or looking at more AP related courses. So I think that was a nice turning point for the project, for us to be able to see, here is a system that the college uses to monitor student performance. Now we're using this at the high school level, but then what does that mean in terms of our individual actions for those students to guide them to success, not just in the current course, but beyond?
Mm-hmm. Can Deb, either you or Tanya, speak to when you use the data to track or to find the students, how did you then go and recruit them and convince them that they would be candidates for these classes?
Right, I saw that in the chat. So we did, we have our geniuses in our IT department created a Tableau dashboard, and we can look at not just GPA, but attendance and proficiency testing, and really narrow down in their enrollment in CCP or AP classes. And we can really narrow down kids that are performing really well are testing well on proficiency tests, but yet they're not showing up in our College Credit Plus or AP classes. So as far as specific strategy, we would get the list of those kids and offer a personal invite and have a meeting, either small group or in an auditorium, depending. While that presentation was offered to the whole school, we would do a smaller targeted conversation and let kids know you are eligible, you are able to do this, and tell them which options they qualified for and the benefits of taking more rigorous work, and specifically like calling parents, and that might be the administrator or the counselor taking on that role. So as far as recruitment, it was personal invitations. And another aspect was educating our faculty as a whole so that our own teachers knew of the courses that were offered and can promote them within. And personally, as someone who taught that class, I had a chemistry class and I had a dual enrollment class. And I would tell students, you can do this. I want you to sign up. And that personal invitation was probably most effective, whether it was from the counselor, the teacher, that seemed to be pretty good. Tanya, do you have anything else?
I would say in addition to those things, it's like you recruit the students, you talk with them in the classroom, and now you have this pool, whether it's the teacher, the administrator, you bring in everybody, from recommendations, but the point from recruitment to enrollment, whoa. So now they're excited, they're pumped, almost literally having like workshops where you have the students in front of a computer and walking them through the steps to applying. And I could let Lauren go into just because you've applied, now there are, another set of steps on the back end of the district going in and making sure that we have checked all the boxes. And if we had residency issues, but there was a lot of, I would say, and just for those that are listening, when you think about this, have your phases laid out where you have that phase 1 that Deb just talked about, but then phase 2 is seats in front of a computer or doing something online that takes the student from I'm here and I want to do this because I've been told that this is a great opportunity to now I'm actually enrolling and I have a support person to help me complete this application, because that's where you can lose students and families. And it's our families really needed to have that system of supports from beginning to end, because sometimes when you're looking at a system where you just come and enroll into the district and you move from 9th to 10th or 11th versus moving from our district system to Columbus State system of enrollment, and that terminology and those words, and just check your email, because now that you've put your email in for the application, there's another step, and that step is happening on the family and student side and not necessarily at the building level. I cannot stress enough how important that is for that second phase, because that's where we found out that we were losing a lot of students. And it kind of goes back to this whole idea of customizing the approach for the students that typically would have not been in this space to access these opportunities. Lauren, does that make sense? I can almost hear some of the stuff that we talked about, so it makes me laugh and smile, but that is something on the front end I wish we had been a little bit more intentional about, because it would have helped our students in the end to maybe not experience some of the frustration between our two systems.
So Lauren, I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about this, but I'd kind of like to focus this. And this was a big challenge, it sounds like, for Deb, for your school district, Tanya, for Columbus City Schools. How did your district, Tanya, decide we really need to work closer with Lauren and Columbus State, and then Lauren saying, okay, here's how we can help make this work?
I would say that we just really took a time to sit and hear. Maybe helping Lauren understand this is what it's like at the building level. These are the hands that we have available. We had a job before this grant came along. We had people that were doing things before this grant came along. We want to be a great partner. We have these students that are now excited. And how can you help us make sure that we're doing what it takes, but also how can we uplift this work and give the students what they need so that we can meet somewhere in the middle. And what Columbus State did a great job of doing was saying, okay, here's how we can help. We will assign an advisor to the district that can be available for your counselors when they have questions about residency, because that's a whole new world for our counselors when we're talking about residency at the college level. But it really had to be a willingness on the district side as well as Columbus State side to figure it out. And to really be mindful about all the different steps that were happening that were new to us.
Go ahead, Lauren. I know in our conversations, Lauren, you've taken like a mother hen role, it seems like. And so go ahead and I'd really like to hear your version, your information too.
Well, I mean, I think too, for the college, it was recognizing that things we think are easy, or maybe are easy for college students that have graduated high school, are not easy, right? And systems that we like very much because we're used to using them, and we can throw around all the jargons and acronyms that you want, are not easy. And so I think a lot of it was also just recognizing that we're hard to work with sometimes, and being open to hearing that feedback and then doing something about it. So trying to figure out, how we streamline things as best as we can, trying to figure out, do we need trainings for the portal system that we use? And then some of what you're hearing too, I think, is that in Ohio, CCP, our dual enrollment program, was state legislated. So it wasn't like we all as educators came together and thought through what is the best way that we could offer a dual enrollment program. It was legislated. And so one of the hurdles that we've had, and really one of the equity issues, is that students have to be Ohio residents. So if they don't have DACA status, they, per the state legislation, cannot participate in our dual enrollment program to get the funding that is allotted from the state. And that's a real frustration. And so part of my role has been to not just be a mother hen and try to help at the high schools, but also start to advocate at the state level for some policy changes so that we can see more equitable outcomes from our dual enrollment work, because at times legislators are not in tune with how things impact those of us that are dealing with the students. And so that was another translation issue on top of all the others. And this grant sort of came into being right at the same time that our dual enrollment program got legislated. And so it was sort of a whirlwind all at once. And I think there are definitely things now that even listening today, I'm like, oh, it would have been great if we had, done X, Y, or Z, or even thinking about next year, like, wow, we should do this better, send people out, in spring to help with application days and that sort of thing. So I think it's just listening to that feedback and being honest with ourselves about how we can change for the better.
And I didn't mean to diminish your role when I said mother hen.
No worries. No, happy to shepherd problems.
Yes, you were on top of everything. And I think that was really important. Deb, could you talk a little bit about how your district worked with the college to not only monitor the data, but also I know there were applications and testing and you solve some problems with the college that way.
Sure. There's one, large one challenge that we had was registering students for classes. And like Tanya mentioned, in the high school, they maybe fill out a form either online or actually still on paper. And our counselors enter that into our student information system, and a schedule is generated for the student. So one, yes, we have to go through all the steps of applying, being eligible, and then registering for the class. So when we have an embedded class, so for us, that means the class is a seated class within our high school, we really needed an easier way for our systems to talk to each other, our student information system and Columbus State's version. So Southwestern and Columbus State IT professionals got together, and I wish I could tell you how they did it, but worked out some magic. So when our students register, when our Southwestern City School students register for a college class that's embedded within our building, they register for the class, and our counselors register them for the class like they would any regular course. So whether it's, English comp at Columbus State or English 3 in the high school, the student registers for the class the same way. And that, for us was one of the biggest examples of collaboration to really ease a cumbersome process.
Mm-hmm.
Some other things were even on the eligibility testing, when we first started off with AccuPlacer, before, like the kids, they wouldn't have to go to Columbus State or get a Columbus State professional. Columbus State trained our counselors, and we were able to then offer those placement tests within our buildings, at a time that was conducive, for the students, and transportation wasn't a barrier, or we weren't, kind of beholden to somebody else's, schedule. And that was also kind of a big step forward for us.
I think transportation is, in almost all programs, is a challenge. Deb, how far are your schools from the campus?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe, 20-minute drive.
Okay.
But I'll tell you something else that I was really proud of. Speaking of transportation, we offered the embedded classes. Obviously, kids could take them if they did have transportation. They could take them on campus or online. But we also did create a kind of a package deal of courses, like I said, general liberal arts, software development, or health sciences. And we provide transportation, the district does, to our 5 high schools. So we'll have shuttles that will run from each high school to Central Crossing. And that cohort of students will receive instruction from a Columbus State instructor that will just come to Central Crossing. Mm-hmm. And we felt that provides our students kind of like a little baby step to the college experience. It doesn't seem like it's just a normal class. They're meeting kids outside of their school, but yet the barrier of transportation has been removed, and they're with a smaller cohort of students. And, to someone's point earlier about providing supports for students, those students have created study groups, exchanged numbers, and those are skills that they'll be able to take with them when they move forward after graduation.
Definitely. Now, Tanya, your schools are much closer to the Columbus State campus. And if I'm not mistaken, your students all take their courses on the campus. Is that correct?
We are a little bit closer, but no, we had a range of students taking courses in the high school as well as students going to campus. What we do to help support students that are taking courses outside of the building is we provide extended CODA passes, which is our Columbus transportation system, where the students are able to, ride CODA to main campus. And that in itself, while it helps support the transportation, it does provide an additional challenge of time from their high school to campus and, back to campus after, so that they can still be, like a part of the high school experience. I love that what Southwestern was able to do to bring them to a central location. Some of the time, especially for Columbus City, our sheer size is just, it really impacts our ability. 18 high schools. So one high school is maybe in walking distance. Actually, there's one that, a student could walk to campus probably in 5 minutes, while another might require a student to take two bus systems or two routes to get to campus. So being able to have the on-campus and in high school option is what's worked for us. But we had a lot of discussions from this grant about what are some other things that we can do. And hearing Deb and knowing how they were able to work with that, breaking down our district into regions is really what I think this grant is helping us uplift in terms of how do we move forward to make sure that we're removing those barriers to participation that do exist.
Lauren, do you have anything to add from the college side? No. Tanya, let me ask about scheduling. How do you work with the students who want to go to the college to take their courses, yet they still have to follow a schedule for the high school?
We rely heavily on our guidance counselors to advise the student and family about how this is going to really work for them. And then also the building administrators, when they're doing that master schedule, which is a science in itself, it's masterful what they're able to do. But how can we ask the building administrator to offer the embedded courses at a time that would allow students to still be able to take advantage of their other high school options for those that are in the building? But then also, when you talk about being able to credential teachers, that is a layer of itself. Now, this is what's available in your high school. But a lot of our students, especially as we moved into years 2 and 3, and they'd already done some of those foundational courses, now they're really pumped about what other CCP courses they can take. And we don't always have the ability to offer that psych, that soc, those next level of courses. And so how do we now allow that master schedule to give students what they need in the building and then time to leave so they can go to campus and take the course and continue on, their academic pathway? But I would say between our guidance counselors and our building administrators in terms of how they do the master schedule and then working with the student on their specific pathway is the way that we've worked that out.
Okay. We're going to just kind of move on to let you talk about describing the characteristics of partnerships. But I wanted to bring in, I know that in interviewing the PI for the project, he discussed talking to the college president, and the college president, one of his directives was, let's not impose our bureaucracy on the K-12 system. So the directive was really to create a solution that was focused on the students. And I know that was very important throughout the project. So let me come to here. In remembering what we've talked about, and the challenges and how you were able to maybe not solve them, but accommodate them and work together. What characteristics do the three of you think are necessary for that successful partnership? And you can just unmute and talk if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in because I think that was our campus president who said that. And I think that, one of the big things was just that philosophical shift to continue to have conversations with our faculty to make sure that, we're always assuming good intent. So I think, unfortunately, at times in education and academia, there's been a bit of a blame game going on, like, well, this happened at this grade level and then at this grade level, and then college professors are like, well, what happened here? And so to get our college faculty off of that track completely and to understand the perspectives of K-12. And I think something that Columbus State did really well is that both myself and the PI and then another individual who's very involved with the project, we all had K-12 backgrounds. So we all had experience in K-12 ourselves. And I think that helped we sort of served as translators so that college, administration and faculty could just hear the voice of K-12 through us and hear it loudly. And so that's been something that I think has really changed for us. A really good example of that is FERPA. I think our faculty and a lot of people that hear FERPA are like, we can't talk to anyone because of FERPA. And so we, with best of intentions, came up with, from our legal department, like a really good FERPA guidebook because there's not one that exists. And our high school partners in one of our meetings when we had everyone together basically said, like, this is terrible. And we don't want you to pass this out to our faculty because from a high school perspective, it was in violation of high school contracts. And so we had to go back to the drawing board and really look at how FERPA could be used as an educational device rather than a silencer. And, we involved our lawyers with that and had many conversations with our high school partners to get to a point where our message can be that FERPA shouldn't be used to hide behind. It shouldn't be used to allow a kid to fail. That there are conversations that can happen between the college and the high school, and then a high school personnel and the parent to make sure that kids are supported. And so that was just a way that we kind of, again, I think from that compliance, mindset, really had to look at what is needed from the high schools so that we're not doing harm. And I think that same mindset has been put into really every aspect of what we're doing in the K-12 partnership space now. But it's just a continual conversation and continuing to just listen to the feedback that we get and have those honest moments internally when we miss the mark.
Well, let me add to that because Lauren has been so gracious to own some of it. And honestly, like when I hear her say, we had to realize that we were just difficult to work with. So our district had to learn or own that too. We had to own that some of our processes weren't streamlined. There was a better way to do it. Not just for our own processes, but really for our students and our families. Like, if this is what we say we want to be able to offer to them, and here are the two systems, what do we have to do as a district to change our policy, our practices, our best intentions to make this easier? And one of the things that Dr. Harrison did a great job of doing well before the project was like bringing the community together to talk about the why. Why do we do what we do from K-12 to our community partnerships with this large community college, and talked with superintendents. Our superintendent took time across, this project to interface with senior leadership at the college so that we didn't have to kind of come to the table necessarily, or a building principal was pretty clear, this is the why and this is what we're doing. And the president from the community college and our superintendent, they are on board, and there is an expectation that this is how we help to leverage this work but also how we get our students to the finish line. So as much as I personally sit in this space, and Lauren and I can text one another about, hey, we have a little hiccup here or a wrinkle, what can we do? Really making sure that our senior leaders were having some of those discussions to make sure that everybody was clear about the why, and then what do we need to do to get to the finish line.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to give Deb the last word. You'll have about a minute, Deb.
That's fine. Yeah, I would really just kind of reemphasize what Lauren and Tanya said. It is really having that shared ideal and purpose and the why for what we're doing, and the willingness to look beyond our standard practices and procedures, and keeping that student center approach. So what's going, not what have we always done, but what new processes and systems can we put in place to make this work? And obviously it's probably been apparent, but really having good points of contact that will see the project through from start to finish, and will champion the purpose and be committed to it. And just having that open line of communication between the different institutions has been key.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate it.
Lori, I'm going to hold this for just a second.
Okay.
And in the event that you want to capture the chat, you'll need to do that.
Sure, I will. I didn't get to our last slide, so let me do that.
It's so nice to see you both, Deb and Tanya. I miss working with you in that specific space, Tanya. So
It's funny because during this conversation, I was like, well, wait, we used to do this so much more. And, you know, not that we can't, but I agree. It is nice to be in this space and to be able to reflect on the work. And Deb, I feel like, you know, being at the ESC in the conference room, you know, to be able to say like, oh, they're doing some really cool stuff. Like, how can we partner with them to do it is definitely something that I miss as well.
Yeah. It's nice to have, yes, that sounding board and hear what other people are doing, and just know, yeah, it's worth it, and keep going and get some new ideas. I'm glad to see that you guys are doing well, though, even on a personal level. It's nice to see you.
yes, same.
Are we still recording, Michelle? We are. Okay.
I was just about to, I didn't want to interrupt anyone, but I'm about to stop that now. Just want to make sure you got the chat, Victoria.
I did. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
So what I